of Marketing and Engagement here at Quality Matters. And I'm going to say welcome to our recognition for quality in course sharing from the institutional perspective. And we're excited about the slate of speakers we have today. Deb Adair, Stephen Kabrhel, Bryan Boatright, Stephen Craig, and Sandra Via-Ellington, all from Quality Matters, from Community College of Baltimore County, from the University of Mount Union, and from Acadeum, all here to provide you with some excellent information about our quality in course share program. So I am going to stop my sharing and turn this over to Deb Adair, who is the CEO of Quality Matters, and she'll also work to introduce everyone else in there as it comes time for them to speak as well. Deb.
All right, thank you, Jim. Let's see if we can't do this transition now. Let's see. Let me just do a check that you're seeing my screen.
Yep.
Okay, great. So yes, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us for us to be able to talk a little bit about what is really a brand new initiative from Quality Matters to do this focused examination of quality in course sharing. So why are we interested in this work? Well, really, it is because course sharing is a rapidly growing part of higher education. And what we've seen is the growth and impact it has really been pronounced over the last few years. And I think it will continue to increase as more and more institutions have had to limit capacity, or they're trying to build capacity in their online efforts. And these kinds of initiatives really support that. So we've seen the rapidly growing enrollment through course sharing. And for example, for Acadeum, on the Acadeum platform alone, since 2019, there's been a 52% average annual increase in their institutional enrollment. There's been a 94% course completion rate for shared courses. And just on the Acadeum platform, there are over 460 institutions that are participating. And since we've been talking about this, since Quality Matters has launched this initiative, we have seen some outreach from a variety of different kinds of course sharing structures and engagements. So there's a lot of this activity happening out there. We have an example here of the HBCU MSI consortium and what they've achieved over the last, just after a year of that engagement. So significantly, I would say that what we're really excited about is what it's doing for students. So eliminating over 800 course availability roadblocks really means that students can have academic continuity and be able to meet completion, to complete and to be retained at the institutions. And so obviously there's cost savings involved for the institutions themselves. There's increased retention. And here you see on the slide, there are 3 data points from different institutions, one of which is here with us today, University of Mount Union, about some of the outcomes of their initiatives in course sharing. So it is important. And of course, because we're Quality Matters, we are focused on the student side of this. So of course, there are benefits for home institutions where the students are matriculated. It's an opportunity for those institutions to expand the courses they're offering. They can use course sharing to help them supplement or develop new programs. And what we heard in the project that we did leading up to this is that all of the institutions see course sharing as a student retention initiative. So lots of benefits for the home institution. For the teaching institutions who participate in this, it's an opportunity for them to increase revenue, to increase numbers in courses that they're already offering. And it's an opportunity to engage and share and collaborate. But for us specifically, it's the benefits to students that got our attention, and that it helps students continue their academic progress so they can graduate on time. It's a very flexible option for students, and it's simple. The courses are pre-approved, and the credit is transcripted. They don't have to transfer back any course credits. So it really is a win-win-win. A little bit about course sharing networks themselves and what we focused on in crafting the framework that we are using today is that course sharing, thinking about it as a closed marketplace with the collaborating institutions. There's a home institution where the students are matriculated and the teaching institution, and they are governed by agreed upon rules in advance. So because the students are at the home institutions really bear the responsibility for quality for those students. And we kept that in mind as we developed this process. This is a complex context, right? This is, in this case, we are looking at course sharing between accredited accredited providers. And in a way, the teaching institution, in a way, is essentially a third-party provider of education for the students from the home institution. And so there are the needs of ensuring that the students are focused on in here, and there are quality indicators was really something we were trying to focus on with this. And examples of course sharing networks, of course, is Acadeum, which was our collaborator initially in this project, in the pilot project, and all kinds of higher education systems and consortia. There are many flavors of course sharing, and we're uncovering more and more of them as we go through this process. But it is a relationship or a collaboration. So the two parties that we have that are involved in course sharing that we focused our analysis on were the home institutions. As I've mentioned a few times, this is where the students are enrolled and matriculated for degrees or certificates. Teaching institutions are the ones offering the courses, but what they're doing is they're opening seats in their online courses to the students from their partner in their partner home institutions. And they're doing this according to executed course sharing agreements. The key elements, and these were things that the Quality Matters, really had to become aware of and consider in the framework that we developed, was that the course sharing agreements are executed between institutions within some form of consortia. So there are a priori agreements that are in place before any courses are shared. Those agreements articulate how students from one institution, or how courses from one institution will be shared with the students from another. And so these tend to be very, very detailed agreements to kind of govern how that's going to work. The students don't have to transfer their credit, and this is really the critical piece in helping make sure there's benefit to students. The credit is transcripted typically as a higher institution or as a home institution course, sorry about that, so that the students simply are able to take courses that are already chosen by the home institution. And if they're successful in completing that course, we'll have it transcripted back. So for Quality Matters, one of the things that we had to really think about in developing this was, even though the home institution is identifying which courses they're going to allow their students to take, they're doing this by things like, what is the level of the course? What is the subject of the course? What are the learning outcomes or learning objectives in that course? But they're not doing it by particular course section or particular instructors, which may change over time at any teaching institution. So we weren't able to approach this as we might have normally, which was to review, evaluate, and certify the specific courses, because those specific courses may vary from instructor to instructor at any given time in that process. So what you'll see here is our approach had to take that into consideration. Our purpose in doing this was really to provide that quality assurance, to make sure that we were focused on that student learning experience and that we could help drive improvement in it. And we wanted to be able to differentiate the providers, the teaching institution providers of that of the courses for the students by quality. So we wanted a quality indicator for those providers. And then we also had to keep in mind that this is a collaboration, and the way that the students are supported and engaged throughout this process requires work on both the home institution side and the teaching institution side. So we created a self-assessment tool for the home institutions to use in areas that we couldn't evaluate. So we started this off with a student-centered definition, which you see here, and I won't read. But this it really focused on 4 principles, which I'll show here and again in our next slide, where we focused on transparency, student learning experience and support, student success, and recognition of learning. And in this definition, you'll see where I have highlighted some the terminology here, but in this process, we are looking at whether the courses are well designed and supported, and the students are supported in the course, and that the course is taught by qualified and well-prepared instructors. And so when you look at our criteria, which I'll show you in a minute, it really focuses on these areas in this definition. So I have to start us off, I just want to make the point that we're going to focus in on the criteria for the teaching, the standards and the criteria for the teaching institutions. But this process that took us 2 years to do really culminated in an entire framework for what would be quality in course sharing. So we did this project in collaboration with Acadeum, and Acadeum's contribution was to provide expertise about the course sharing agreements and what's typically included in those, access to expert practitioners whom we recruited to be part of advisory councils and working groups to help us work through this process and develop this framework. And so again, you'll see make sure this isn't blocking. The 4 principles across the bottom there are the core pillars, I guess, in this framework, and to which we aligned the guidelines for the home institutions and the standards for the teaching institutions. And so we'll start briefly with the guidelines for the home institutions. Again, we're not evaluating the home institutions, but we did develop the guidelines, which adds detailed guidance for like checklist self-assessment for home institutions to be able to sort of work through the process about how they were ensuring quality for those students. Part of that is their responsibility to select the courses that are going to meet the standards that are aligned to those principles, because they're the ones making the decisions about what courses they will allow their students to take. And we want to make sure that they are empowered to be able to choose those learning opportunities that are quality. So for the teaching institutions, we developed a set of standards, and those standards include 22 course design standards, which were derived from the QM standards. They're not exactly the same as the QM standards, but they were certainly derived and informed by them. One of those criteria, one of the standards is about instructor preparation, how those instructors are prepared and qualified to teach online in that area, that subject area. And then how that instructor is supported, that the instructor is supported. So what we have done from that is develop a set of criteria that can evaluate whether the teaching institution can consistently meet those standards. So, and at the end of that process, at the end of the evaluation, the review and the evaluation, for those who are able to successfully meet that, this is what the award looks like from Quality Matters. This is an institution level award. It's not awarded per course, as I mentioned before. In this model, we're not actually able to evaluate each and every course. So we have to evaluate their quality assurance protocols that drive their ability to consistently meet those standards. So process and criteria, it's a pretty straightforward process that we walk through in terms of an application in which an institution would demonstrate readiness and commitment for the process. We do have a set of not just the criteria, but annotations around them to help the institution understand what was going to be required. An institution would submit the information, which is really it's a narrative plus the evidence artifacts that we're looking for. We will assign a peer review team. They'll provide some initial findings and initial or additional questions based on their initial review. The institution will have an opportunity to respond to those questions and make a final submission, and then we'll make an assessment and award recommendation. So these are the three criteria that we're looking at in this evaluation. The first is about do the quality courses align to standards? So what we're looking at is, well, I'll break this down in just a minute. So we're looking at quality courses aligned to standards. The second criteria is credentialed and prepared instructors. And the third criteria is supporting those instructors, specifically in the context of course sharing. So the criterion one evidence, we're really looking at four things. The quality standards substantially represent those teaching institution course design standards, those 22 that I mentioned. Institutions do not have to be using the Quality Matters rubric in this work. What they do have to do is be able to demonstrate that the standards they're using are actually aligned with our teaching institution standards. So that would have to be demonstrated in some kind of a alignment matrix to be able to show how that matches up. The second thing, and what is probably the biggest piece of evidence here, is the quality assurance protocol, the course review protocol that's used. An institution may do this at both ends and have a protocol in terms of the design piece and then review piece after design. But we want to know, what is the oversight process for that? How are you training reviewers to do this, to do these reviews? How are you applying the standards? What's your threshold? How are you doing that work? What's your schedule or plan for a re-review, and how are you documenting it? So we're looking for a narrative and evidence about these things. We want to see evidence that it's not just a plan, but you're actually executing the plan, and that we need evidence that all of the courses that you're offering on course sharing, through course sharing, have been reviewed with this process. Criterion 2 is really about the faculty that you're using. We want to see the policies or official criteria on the academic qualifications of instructors. What is it that you require? Usually this is going to be what your accreditor requires. What your requirements are for teaching online, what's your policy and requirements, and then what guidance you're providing about RSI, regular and substitute interaction. And then the second piece of this is really the evidence that you're preparing all of your instructors teaching online courses through course sharing to be effective, responsive, and engaging online instructors. And that means being able to provide evidence of not just that these instructors have received training, but what kind of training did they receive? And it would have to be more than just training on how to use the technology, but it is training about pedagogy to be able to be effective, responsive, and engaging in online education. And then criteria 3, which is really about supporting those instructors so that they can support these external students in their course. So the first is a protocol to inform instructors about the fact that they do have these external students enrolled in their course through this course sharing arrangement, so they can be prepared to support those students. The second one is communication to those instructors with recommendations on how to support external students. These students are, coming from from their home institution where they're used to those courses. They have a set of expectations. They know how the university works. Now they're coming over and taking these courses in a new environment, and so there could be challenges for those students, and we're looking for the teaching institution to recognize where those students may have challenges and how to best support them. And then the third is to give us some examples of resources and support that you are providing to the instructors about how to do that very thing. So where there are likely to be gaps, where have you observed these students are struggling, and how are you helping the instructors with tools or resources to support that? So to wrap this up before I invite the other panelists to come on, I just want to say that when we ask for evidence in the submissions, we tell our reviewers to look for more than just the narrative. We want to know, of course, that you're setting the expectations for quality, that you have the policies and you've identified specific practices. We also want the reviewers to be able to see evidence of execution. Are they actually executing the practices that they describe in the narrative? And we also want to see evidence that they're meeting the goals, the purpose of doing this process. So that may look different for different institutions, but we're really looking at those 3 levels of evidence. And we're looking at that in terms of the totality of evidence per criteria, right? Because some things lend themselves better to being able to show results than others. But really, we're looking for this kind of robust evidence that the way that you are pursuing and ensuring quality is robust and can be demonstrated. So with that, I'm going to invite our panelists to give you a little insight about what that was, about the experience they had in going through this process and any results from that. So I'm going to first invite Stephen from the Community College of Baltimore County. Stephen, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Deb. I appreciate that. And thank you, everybody, for attending. I'm the Dean of Online Learning at the Community College of Baltimore County. And in that role, I oversee both the learning management system as well as the instructional design department. And I also liaise with the student services and academic affairs area. We're a large institution. Depending on the year, we are either the first or the second of the 16 community colleges. We offer multiple degrees and certificates, both on as credit and as continuing education or workforce development. And we offer a very large menu of not just unique courses, but also the number of sections. And you can see that our enrollment this past year has been the highest online and blended that we've ever had. But I really want to identify quickly that that Maryland Online is one of the really the beginning of Quality Matters. And I'm honored to not only be part of that group, but also to be here with you all to sort of show the experience of what Quality Matters has done for our institution. And we've subscribed to Quality Matters really since its inception, and we've bought into its methodology of quality assurance. And the other component of Maryland Online, besides being the parent of Quality Matters, is that they have their own seat sharing initiative as well. And what came to how we sort of came to both the review, Acadeum, and Maryland Online, the seat sharing, is that it really supports what the college missions is. Accessible, affordable, high quality education. And a lot of the community college, I mean, really all four-year institutions do that. But really what we see and have seen is that with the growth of online, we want to be able to take what we knew because of our work with Maryland Online, because of Quality Matters, and share that with not just the Baltimore region, but as many folks as we can. Part of that other mission and really a core of also our strategic plan is completion. Like, of course, most of our institutions on the call here. And so what really, before we even got to know Acadeum, the idea that within the Maryland Online seat bank that we have, the idea that there were much smaller community colleges that, and it started primarily with teacher education, the idea that there are some institutions that have maybe a broader breadth of courses, that the smaller institutions could do their core courses, but then they could reach out and take those other courses without obviously having to travel. But how could we make in such a way that we could get around some of the rules of, well, you have to be a student at the other institution, and then we got to transfer back? Can we cut some of that out of the way? And Deb mentioned that earlier in the slides. And what really drives the point home is the reason why these students are doing it is, one, their institution didn't have the courses, but two, if you expand it beyond that, the idea of course sharing is to keep that student, whether it's that they don't have the courses, whether they they have to miss out because, like our students, they're working full time and they have jobs and all the families and whatnot. Maybe they can't get that course that they need, and then the course isn't offered at the semester. So the flexibility to get the students to complete, that's what really hit home for us in terms of course sharing. So you can see that from a Maryland Online perspective, we average about 62 students that we serve as a teaching institution for both Acadeum and Maryland Online. And we only recently came across Acadeum, and we are slow in sort of building our number of students. We also now see this as an opportunity, again, as Deb mentioned earlier, to expand our revenue by providing. So you get to do both at the same time: serve the students and provide some more revenue to give the college more opportunity to provide more training, to provide more courses, to support the students, and so on. And you can see that, as we continue to grow,
Sorry, could you say
the more the students use support, that even gets into some of our dually enrolled students. So the award here, I thought it was really great that the focus of the review itself was not just from a course by course. It looked at all the pieces of course sharing. And I was fortunate enough to really have worked on, well, what's the introduction letter and how do we get services to these students, and what happens if they do need to actually access systems that are part of the community college, and some of these other pieces that it's not specific to. Well, let's get them in the learning management system. There's a lot more around it. How do we notify faculty that these students are there, and what might make them unique? So the idea that the review looks at the breadth of services for students, I think, was really important, and it helped me not just verify that what we were already doing was satisfactory, but that, I hadn't thought about that component, and yes, let's add that into our processes or our systems, because it helped us identify a gap. So it wasn't just, okay, let's check it all out. It's, we're missing pieces. Well, let's put that in, make it part of our standard operating procedures, and now we can also show that particularly as evidence. And so it really then gets to show we are doing what we intended to do with the course sharing platform. It's proof that we're talking the talk that we say we want to be able to provide. And getting the award absolutely is a differentiator from the landscape. Deb mentioned there's many of these consortia or groups or organizations that are looking to do this. So the more online grows, the more institutions become involved. How are we going to identify ourselves as a cut above? And this is one of those things. And my colleagues from Mount Union will mention this in a little bit more detail, but seeing this on a institution, on a national level, beyond just what I have my faculty and my courses do at my institution, it shows that it's more than just, well, Dean Kabrhel's over there making us do this, that, and the next thing. It actually shows that there are bigger, broader implications and benefits from doing course sharing. So I really, truly am honored to have participated in this, and absolutely will continue to expand and promote this. I think it's really important that institutions involved in course sharing show that it's not just we're winging it, that there is a backbone to it. So thank you, and we'll let Bryan and the Mount Union staff sort of get into more details.
Okay, great. Thank you, Stephen. And yes, Bryan and Bryan Boatright and Stephen Craig, I give you the floor.
Sure. Well, thanks, Stephen, for the nice transition, and Deb, of course, you and your entire team, and Sandra, you and the Acadeum team have been tremendously supportive of us through this process. So we can't thank you enough, and we're happy to be here. So, a couple of things that I think are really important to understand about Mount Union, and really, I'm not going to take much of the floor here. I'm going to let Stephen do his thing, because he's my TI side of things. But we are a small private liberal arts institution, mainly residential. In fact, we describe ourselves as a residential institution, and I find that important to bring up, because I think there might be a lot of folks in this call saying, well, how does a small institution that's residential based really kind of get involved in this? We started with Acadeum back in 2019, right around their inception, really. And our goal way back then was just to fill some holes that we had. We weren't a really particularly strong online institution, and we were looking for some options for our students. And I think most folks who have been involved with Acadeum have found that as you move through course sharing in general, you realize that it has a lot more applications for your institution, especially as a small institution. And as Stephen said, when you're talking about completing students, right, like getting them to the finish line, this is the best way to do this. But, as we got involved, we started to learn very quickly that this was not only great for our students, it's great for the institution. It broadens our portfolio. It increases the revenue streams that we have here, but also really kind of forced us to think about how we were delivering not only our online coursework, but also the coursework that was coming to us from Acadeum. And so I don't know, Stephen, it was probably about 2020 when Stephen jumped on board, and we really kind of subscribed then to Quality Matters, kind of both feet in. To give you a little bit of an idea, one of the things that's really important, and why I think this recognition is really important, is we have control over course sharing courses a lot more than we would if a student was to take courses, let's say over the summer as a transient student at another institution. And for us, that was huge, because we just really never knew what was happening when those students would go away. And I jotted down some numbers this morning I thought were pretty interesting. So in the summer of 2017, we had about 900 credit hours leave the institution over the summer as transient to local, institutions, whether there were community colleges or other four-year institutions. That's a huge revenue loss to the institution and a real big unknown for us. This past summer, we processed less than 150 credit hours as transient, because we were able to leverage Acadeum and then our partnership with Quality Matters to really focus on keeping students in courses that we felt were strong, had the quality that they needed. And it's become part of our process here at the institution. And so Mount Union really has kind of embraced all of this as a way, as an extension of registration for our students. But more importantly, I think course sharing and again, this recognition is important to us because, again, being a liberal arts institution that is grounded, really as a residential institution, we have recognized and we've embraced as an institution that this is a collaboration that contributes to the evolution of higher education. I mean, it really is. I mean, if you're not doing this or you're not thinking about doing this at some point, it's going to be pretty tough. And so when Deb and her team asked if we would participate in the advisory group, I was more than happy to say, hey, yes, let's look at this, and then raised our hand when we said, hey, we'd like to try this out. We'd like to go through this process. Now, all that to say that Stephen Craig did most of the work and didn't know that I had volunteered him to do most of the work, but he did a great job, and I really think that this has changed the way that Mount Union not only thinks about quality online course sharing, but quality courses in general. It is because of these processes with Acadeum and Quality Matters that we now have, I think, one of the strongest online offerings and programs at least within our region, and maybe nationally for private institutions. So, Stephen, I'm gonna let you talk a little bit about the fun part, if you don't mind.
Sure. Deb, can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So I'll talk just a little bit about the work that went into this. And I know Stephen kind of alluded about the process, but I'll go a little bit more in depth. I want everybody to know this is a robust process. This is a process that we did not just do on a whim. This took us a long time, took us several weeks to put together the report, the narrative, all of the different pieces of evidence that we submitted to Quality Matters. So we really took our time putting things together for QM. And then, as you know, the group went through, they looked at all of our evidence, they looked at our narrative, and then they came back and they asked us for more. And that was really a cool process. It was really reflective process for us, because we were having this third-party group look at all of the different things that we've been doing for years. We started a lot of this stuff back in 2020, early 2020, and following these different processes and models, but we had not had a lot of outside groups kind of looking at what we're doing and giving us feedback. So as QM is always talking about continuous improvement, this process definitely was a continuous improvement, but not at the course level. It was at the program level, as Stephen was talking about. It was something that I feel like sharpened the way that we do our course developments and the way we think about our course development process. And what ended up happening was through this process, we ended up writing different policy and adding some different policies and different practices, like written practices, for some of the stuff that we were doing that was unspoken. So when they were asking us for evidence of different things, we're like, oh, well, we've been doing that all along, but we never wrote it down. We never wrote down that practice, or we never went ahead and put that into our policy. And so we've changed our online education policy based off of this experience. And I think it was really, really helpful to us, making sure that we had those different pieces in there. The other thing that I think was really important about this is we really are focused on quality at Mount Union in our online courses. We are really proud of our work with Acadeum as a teaching institution, and we think we do a great job with our courses. But the amount of time it takes for us to go through a course development, to train a faculty member in online education, to work with them on a course development, and then for us to review using Quality Matters rubrics and getting those faculty through that takes up a lot of time. It takes up resources, and sometimes, it can take money as well. And so I feel like this process and the certification helped leadership to understand why our processes are so rigorous. It was great for it to not just be Bryan and I saying, hey, we're doing this. This is the right thing. It's not just the right thing, but this is the, this is the best practices. This is the highest standards is what we're following. For us to have a third party group and a team of folks look at our program and say, no, you really are following those best practices. That was great. And I feel like it made our leadership really understand why they're investing in our team and in our instructional design team and in our faculty. We also, I know Stephen was talking about Maryland's connection with Quality Matters. Ohio is also really connected with Quality Matters. I'm a part of the executive board for Quality Matters Ohio, and they've been really excited and interested in this QiCS process. And it was awesome after the announcement went out. Lots of folks from the state were congratulating us on successfully getting this certification. And actually next week, I'm having a webinar for Quality Matters Ohio, where I'm going to be talking about the QiCS process as well as our work with Acadeum. So that's been really cool as well. And Bryan and I fully expect, and we've kind of already started to see an increase in numbers on Acadeum because of this, because of the way that Acadeum has really broadcasted Mount Union and the other groups that have received this certification, that within the consortium, it's really easy for you to select groups that have gotten this certification and to see the different courses. We're really excited about what Acadeum has done there, and we think it's going to help us to increase our numbers. Some other impacts, just different impacts from the course sharing. As I said, every course goes through this rigorous QM process. And so because we go through this process, having Acadeum there, as most of our faculty really want their courses to be on Acadeum. They want to be able to get students from all over the United States and internationally. And so we use Acadeum as a carrot for us, and as we push them through that rigorous QM process. So these two groups used together it's been really positive for us and transformative for us. We have had a lot, as a teaching institution, we've had a lot of repeat customers, and I 100% think that is because we so rigorously follow the QM process. As folks have said, these students are going from a different learning management system into our learning management system. And so that can be difficult for a student to go from Blackboard to D2L or from Canvas to a different LMS. And so what we have done is we've templated every single one of our courses. We've made sure that every single one of our courses is following the QM design standards, but we've also been making sure that we're reaching out to all of those students and helping them and making sure they're acclimating to these courses. So we are really, really spending a lot of time making sure that these outside students from other institutions are successful. And it's really great. Getting this certification really is great recognition of the work that we've been doing with that. And so we're complimented regularly on our courses by both the institutions and by students that take it. And like I said, the students have very little issue adapting to our courses.
All right, thank you, Stephen. And I appreciate you and Bryan giving us that insight into what it meant for your institution to do this work. And now I would like to invite Sandra to come and talk to us a little bit about Acadeum and what this actually looks like on the Acadeum platform.
Deb. So I was really excited to see this come to fruition. 2 years ago, I was asked to be on the working group for this, and actually I was asked to do this prior to joining Acadeum when I was still at my previous institution. So I got to see it from both sides. And this is a really wonderful opportunity for institutions on the platform like Mount Union and CCBC to offer their courses that have met these quality guidelines, but also for these home institutions to find classes that they know that their students are going to have a great experience because they have gone through these rigors and they're going to get the quality instruction that they need and we all want our students to have in order to be successful. Even though Deb has given you a little bit of background about course sharing, I just want to give you a little bit of background about Acadeum itself. So Acadeum has now actually we have over 500 member institutions on the platform, and that is domestically and internationally, and it includes even some K through 12 partners as well. And the thing about Acadeum is it's a network made up of networks. So it is made up of consortia across the country and throughout the world, including the Council of Independent Colleges, SREB, HBCU, consortia, and many others that are on the platform. And it allows institutions to collaborate and work with other institutions that have the same mission and have the same focus as they do. And we've seen that our institutions that are on the platform have been very successful. They've recovered more than 45 million in revenue, whether that be retention or as a TI gaining that revenue. We also have over 100,000 sections on the network. And these guys are really positioned in a great area because they're one of 3 institutions that have met the Quality Matter standards out of those 100,000 sections. So, and there are a number of in-demand certificate offerings that we allow institutions or give institutions opportunity to take advantage of, as well as we can help institutions create new program pathways at their own institution if they're unable to do it or don't have the bandwidth to do it themselves. Yeah. So Acadeum enables colleges. So we are a B2B company. So what that means is we allow institutions to connect with one another. And your students would be taking courses at accredited institutions. So that allows the student to use their financial aid, which helps them in terms of making sure that it's an affordable option for them. They're not paying necessarily out of pocket for it. And they're able to do that because even though the teaching institution is another party that's offering the course, it's still an accredited institution and has met the guidelines that are necessary for Title IV fund distribution. It's also a low-risk way to expand your course offerings at your institution. A number of institutions engage in a number of use cases. So it could be to retain your students by offering offering courses for academic recovery. It could be offering courses for athletic eligibility, limiting the number of independent studies, or broadening your catalog so that your student can take an independent study or a course in an area, a course that your institution may not be able to offer. So now I want to share my screen with you guys so I can show you just how easy it is to find the courses that have met these Quality Matters standards on the platform.
Sandra, you want me to stop sharing so you can share?
Yes, please.
Okay. There you go.
Let me go. All right. Can everybody see my screen? Just making sure.
Yeah.
All right. So when I say it is simple, I mean it is very simple. All you have to do is log into your instance on the platform and come over here. We have this QM online course sharing, and all you have to do is toggle it on, and now you have access and see every institution, every course that has met the Quality Matters standard. It's just as easy as that. If you want to search by consortial partners, all you have to do is toggle right there, on consortial, and now you see all your consortial partners, and you can do your standard search. So if I wanted to find, let's say, a calculus course, I can search for it, and now I see that there are options in that area for me to look through for my students. And I want to jump on one thing that Bryan said earlier, and that is when you do this, you know that your student is going to get that quality course. They're not going to be going out to a community college or somewhere else and enrolling in a class and then sending a transcript back before you've even had the chance to review the course. So this provides you an opportunity to make sure that the student is getting a wonderful experience, because again, they have that, the class that they're enrolling in has that QM certification, or has met those QM standards, I should say.
Okay, thank you, Sandra. And Jim, good. You're already popping back in here. So now I'm turning this over to you. So I think we're ready for any Q&A.
The first question, I mean, this just goes right back to what Sandra was saying. I'm seeing the student-facing page for Acadeum. Is there an institutional-facing informational URL that you could share?
Oh, that was the institutional facing.
Perfect.
Mm-hmm.
And then here are a couple of questions. I'm not sure who to toss it to. I'll start, and then Deb, maybe you can tell me. If the teaching institution is a state agency that uses instructors from multiple institutions and not a traditional institution, can that teaching institution still apply to be reviewed for recognition and quality course sharing?
So I'll say, so this is one of the things that have come up since we've been talking about this, these variations on how this is done. And it would require a modification. So you would just need to talk to us about that. But the principles would still apply, because we would just have to change the process.
Same person's probably on the same lines. Is the quality course sharing recognition available to you if your course sharing platform is not Acadeum? Sorry, Sandra.
Yes, and Acadeum was very clear at the beginning that they didn't expect this to be exclusive to them. They did this as a sort of a helping to support this good faith, broader effort to ensure quality. So yes, you neither have to be a QM member institution, and you don't have to be on the Acadeum platform to get this recognition.
And then this one I'm going to toss to both of the institutions. How do you deal with the variety of faculty members regarding buy-in into the process? There are institutions with a combination of new progressive faculty members and experienced faculty members that are content with the way things are at their institutions.
Yeah, I'll start that one quickly. For us, it's at least been, because we've done Quality Matters for so long. Yes, there absolutely is some resistance to, meeting QM standards as a whole, and we're slowly working on those. You get the ones that are in it to win it, and then we slowly come along. But from a course sharing perspective, the only issue I've come across so far has been when there have been some challenging students that have come through whichever platform, whether Maryland Online or Acadeum. And so then some faculty will say, well, now they're taking up seats and they're not doing very well. And we as a practice make sure that there's still a few seats left for our own. And, the students are going to get what they get no matter how well they do. And so it's just, hey, we're not disadvantaging our own students. We're providing for these students that didn't have the advantage that ours do. And so far, that's worked. I don't know if Bryan and Stephen have some follow-up there.
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I think for us, we had to. Stephen had mentioned, dangling that carrot a little bit, but we had to do that a little bit because we were so new to online. Also, that this was all very new to us. But the way it's worked really is that, and I think Stephen would agree, we're finding, yes, of course, the new and progressive faculty, the younger folks, they're really into this. But We brought along the more seasoned folks by the sheer fact that they realized that it was a thing happening, right? The students were really interested in this. And also, we use it as professional development for the faculty, right? So we're like, hey, let's have you build this course, and we pay to build courses too, so that helps a little bit. But we also allow faculty, so part of their load requirement is the number of students that they teach, of course, right? And we allow the Acadeum in students, or our TI side of students, to count towards that student load for them as well. So we really pitch this to, let's say there's a course, and I'm going to pick on English just because we've had some struggles with English lately. Let's say there's an English course that, you know, there's a faculty really passionate about teaching this course, and there's some interested students at Mount Union's campus, but the reality is if it doesn't have enough students, we're going to cancel the section. We really pitch this as a way to say, maybe, just maybe, this might be a really great example to put on the course sharing platform because you're going to get more students and then you can run your course. So that's really helped us quite a bit. Also, it's really easy, like Sandra said, when they realize the quality that sits out there on the platform and that they can see these other courses. And now with this additional level of quality assurance, I mean, it's not super hard to get those folks once you start getting that momentum going. Stephen, you deal with them more on the build side, so it's really, you know.
I think, you know, we started, as Bryan said, we were very new to online, and so we started with trying to change policy. So it was kind of the Wild West before we kind of started this in 2020, and so we centralized all of our online course development processes, and we basically put together a policy that said if you don't go through the process, you can't have a course that is online. And so that was what we had to do. We put that policy together. If we did not pay folks for course development, I don't think it would have been successful. So the pay for the course development, I think, was a huge piece. And then when we were putting together our process, we based it totally on Quality Matters standards. So it was easy for us because we were starting from that standpoint of like, this is new. We can just literally just take Quality Matters standards and say, this is what you have to do. So we used those, and then Acadeum was happening right at the same time, that TI, us becoming a teaching institution. And as I said before, folks were really wanting their courses to be on Acadeum. And that was the other thing that we said is you cannot have your course on Acadeum unless it goes through this process as well. So all of those kind of things kind of came together, took a lot of work and a lot of time. And I think we're really happy where we are now. But it definitely took some time, and it was not easy to convince, you know, all of the faculty, but it was kind of a grassroots effort. And then there was, I'd say a couple of years ago, there was a tipping point where I feel like all of our faculty just see like, this is the process. This is how you do online. So it's been great to be a part of. And I think without Bryan's support, I don't know that we would have been able to get to where we are now.
And we should be clear too that not everybody jumped on the train with us, by the way. So there's still some folks that are, you know, at the station, and that's okay.
We might have time for one more, and I'm seeing it here. I'll maybe toss it back to you guys again. How can the home institution offer degree programs with courses that the home institution does not offer itself?
So that I'm not sure if I'm interpreting that as the teaching institution providing programs that the home institution's not. And maybe Sandra can speak to that. I know I've had some conversations of that scenario where we can say, hey, there's, you know, these opportunities for these courses, and Acadeum does have a degree share program. Sandra, do you want to chime in there?
Yeah, so we do have what we call program shares. So we can, you would work with a curriculum development architect at Acadeum. Usually that's me. And I help you look through your curriculum and determine what kind of courses you can already offer at your institution and see where some of those gaps are so that you can offer that new program that you want to create. Maybe it's cybersecurity or something like that. And then we go through and look at institutional partners that are offering those courses on the platform and looking to see what kind of criteria you want those institutional partners to meet. Maybe it's you want them to have the same mission, you want them to be a private, you want them to be faith affiliated, or have the QM meet the QM standards. And we would go through and help you identify those courses, go through your curriculum process, but also work with you and the teaching institution to develop an MOU so that you make sure that you're both on the same page with the standards and rotations, assessments, those types of things. I hope that answers the question.
And I want to say thanks. We're at the top of the hour, so I want to say thanks to our panelists, to Deb, Sandra, Stephen, and Bryan. Thank you all for attending as well. Hope you learned a little bit about quality and course sharing, and we will be sharing out this recording and the slides next week. So thank you guys very much, and have a good rest of your day. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.